Hey everybody, Justin White here, and you're about to listen to episode 19 of Power Forward. Our guest is Paige Arnof-Fenn, and she is the CEO of Mavens and Moguls, a marketing and consulting agency based in Boston. Paige has had a very interesting career, from working on Wall Street to big companies like Coca-Cola to tech startups, and now owning her own business. Paige will talk about the experiences she's had and share some great advice on marketing, branding, and how to maximize efficiency as an entrepreneur. You'll also find out how some personal losses she went through altered the course of how Paige runs her business and her life. A conversation with Paige Arnof-Fenn comes your way right now on Power Forward. The primary purpose of this podcast series is to inform, entertain, and educate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast series do not constitute legal or other professional advice, opinions, or endorsements of any kind.
This is Power Forward.
All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White and Mateen Cleaves with you. Mateen, what is good, my friend?
Oh, Justin, just living a dream, man. Please don't wake me up.
Well, we know you're always living that dream, but I gotta ask you just about the way that we live. You know, obviously, society today, we all lead busy lives. We've all got lots going on in both our professional and our personal lives. So when you think about all of those things, right, obviously you've got certain responsibilities that you have to attend to. That's just the way it is. But when you think about some of the other things, some of the things that you can potentially cut out and maybe simplify a bit, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Justin, one thing I found that works for me is prioritizing. You know, I would always, to be honest, a year or two ago, I would spread myself so thin because I was trying to be there for everybody. But now I prioritize, family, business, and that has helped me out so much by just prioritizing and delegating some other things to other people.
You know, you make a good point because it's really hard to try to be everything to everyone. And I guess depending on your personality type, you may be the kind of person who wants to do everything you can for every person in your life, whether it's at work, whether it's your family, or whether it's your friends.
Oh yeah, I tried it and it didn't work. So the main thing for me, like I said, just prioritizing and just knowing it's not even humanly possible to be there for everyone.
Yeah, so we all want to do more, right? We want to take on more responsibility, but sometimes maybe less truly is more.
Yep. And taking time for myself has helped me out so much. I mean, I'm more energized and it's just better for the other things that I kind of key on.
All right. Well, this conversation really segues nicely to our guest on this episode. We are pleased to be joined by Paige Arnof-Fenn. She is the CEO of Mavens and Moguls, which is a global strategic marketing and consulting agency, which is based in Boston, Massachusetts. Paige, welcome to Power Forward.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you, and you've got a great story, and we're gonna talk all about your career path and the things that you have experienced. But first of all, for our listeners, tell us a little bit about you and your business, Mavens and Moguls.
Sure. Well, I started Mavens and Moguls just over 18 years ago, right after 9/11. I started my career on Wall Street in the 80s, like a lot of young people back then when Michael Douglas won the Oscar for the first Wall Street movie. I think a lot of us became enamored with the go-go years. And so I started my career there and decided pretty quickly it was not really a great fit for me. It was an intense experience. I learned a ton, but the lifestyle overall really wasn't compatible, I think, with the way I wanted to live my life. So I went back to business school, rebranded myself, became a marketing person, and I spent many years in corporate America doing corporate marketing, which I enjoyed thoroughly. But, corporate jobs can be pretty constraining. And when the internet started to take off, I got bitten by the dot-com bug and joined my first startup in 1997, which was kind of Internet 1.0, and had a wild ride. It was really fun, and we went public in 99. We were sold to Yahoo. I joined another startup, That got sold to a large global company. I did another startup as the head of marketing, and that company also went public and was sold. So at that point, I had truly been bitten by the dot-com bug and really loved the more entrepreneurial, fast-paced environment.
You mentioned being bit by the dot-com bug and your experience on Wall Street and, bouncing around in the startup world. You actually also started off with some really big companies, some big brands, Paige, like Procter & Gamble and a little company called Coca-Cola. Tell us about those experiences working for those huge corporations, those big companies, and kind of what your aspirations were at that time.
So it's interesting. When I graduated from business school, my aspiration was I wanted to be a big-time Fortune 500 CEO, like Meg Whitman or Carly Fiorina or Ursula Burns. Like those women to me were true role models. I wanted to run a big brand, big company. And when I joined Procter & Gamble right out of business school, P&G invented the concept of brand management. They are the category leader in number one and or number two in every category they compete in. You know the brands, Pantene, Pampers, Crest, Tide, Charmin. I mean, these are like the most successful brands in every single consumer products category. And I was a summer intern for them the summer between first and second year in business school, and then I went back to work for them for about 3 years after business school. And, they are the mecca of marketing. They invented the whole concept of brand marketing, and they teach it so well. I mean, they just drill it into you, and they know how to do it really well. And I felt like even though I had an MBA, I felt like going to P&G for 3.5 years was the equivalent of getting like a PhD in marketing, because that's just, you live, breathe marketing. They teach you every aspect of pricing, promotion, like everything you need to know about your customer, the audience, advertising, branding, every part of the mix. And it was just such a great training ground. I learned so much there. But big companies are, they're not looking for you to recreate the wheel. They want you to do it their way. They've put a lot of time and energy and money invested in their process. And I was, right out of school in my 20s, and we'd be in meetings and the boss would be telling us how we were supposed to do stuff, and I would raise my hand and say, I have an idea. Why don't we try this? Or has anyone thought about this? What do y'all think? And, people would look at me like, we're not asking for your opinion, Paige. We're asking you to execute the plan. Like, I was always the person trying to bend, break, and change the rules in my corporate jobs. And I never thought of myself as entrepreneurial. I thought of myself as a future Fortune 500 CEO. But now looking back, I realize, at Coca-Cola, same thing. I mean, Coke is the most recognized brand in the world. Coke is sold in over 200 countries around the world. It is a true global brand. But they're not looking for you to do it your way. They want you to do it their way. And when the internet started to take off in the mid to late 90s, I'd taken computer science classes in college. I was getting very intrigued by all things internet and startup. I was reading all the magazines and, spending a lot more time online every day. And when I saw an opportunity pop up to go be the head of marketing, the top, chief marketing officer of a new company, it was so intriguing and exciting to me. It was also a little scary because I had been pretty risk averse up until that point in my life and my career. I had gone to big name schools. I had worked at big name companies. When I handed people my business cards, they'd look at the logo and they'd say, "Wow, that's impressive." And, when you work for the 800-pound gorilla, everybody in the world knows Coca-Cola. Everybody in the world uses Procter & Gamble products. And then I went and joined a startup that no one had ever heard of before. The logo meant nothing. The name meant nothing. And now I was in charge of that brand. And that was, and at the time, we were very early stage, and I didn't have a big team. I didn't have a big agency to help me. It was kind of me, myself, and I, and building that team. And it was scary, but it was really exciting. And I think for me, I really got to test my mettle and see what I was made of, not what the big corporation could do, but what could I do with all the knowledge and training and development they had put into me. What can I do to make this brand come to life? And in about a year and a half, we built the brand from nothing to a very well-known brand that ended up going public and getting sold to Yahoo, and it became Yahoo Music. So it was a real known brand, and I did it again with the second startup, and the third startup was Zipcar, which no one had ever heard of. There was no such thing as car sharing back then, and we had kind of started that category. And now, Zipcar is a public company. It's, $1 billion valuation. It's, got acquired by Avis. It's huge. And there's so much, it's so fulfilling and so gratifying to have taken a brand that didn't exist and that was brand new and putting it on the radar and turning it into a brand that people know, love, use every day. I mean, when I joined Zipcar and these other companies, I really thought I was building the next Starbucks, I thought it was going to be like a brand that everyone would know and use and love, and that it was my DNA that was in that brand from day one. And that's something you can't do at P&G and Coke, but you can do with a startup.
All right, Paige. So you talked about building a successful brand, and certainly, you have helped transform the brands of multiple companies, including the company that you started yourself. I want to ask you, and I know that every company is different, what they desire for a brand, but what are the main principles, those philosophies that you have brought with you to each of your stops, and when you sit down and really dig in and say, okay, we're going to build this brand, we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it successfully. What are the biggest things that come to mind for you with that?
So, brands are what make you visible in an increasingly invisible world. There's a lot of noise out there, and if you're not a brand, you don't stand out. So I am a big believer in the power of branding. And one of the core tenets, if you will, of building a great brand is it's got to be authentic. And it should be unique, special, and different because it's your brand. So what's unique, special, and different about you? You want to be an original. Otherwise, you're competing on price, and that's not a good place to be. So, whatever your category, whether it's a consumer product, a professional service business, a financial service business, you need to stand out. And you have to be creative. How do you want people to think about you? How do you want them to feel after interacting with you? How are you different from your competition? And it requires you to be honest. You have to kind of speak your truth and be trusted by the audiences that you're reaching out to. And it's about being relevant and timely. Brands can't be created in a vacuum. You've got to look at them in the context of the world they're living in. And you need to be consistent. You know that if you go to McDonald's in any city around the country or anywhere around the world and you order a Big Mac and, fries and a large Coke, you have an idea of what that experience is going to be, and it's going to be a consistent experience. A brand is a promise that they're going to deliver on it every time. And if every time you went to McDonald's it was a different thing, it would not resonate in the same way. You have an expectation that they're going to deliver on that promise. And one of the most important things I think about branding is you have to be passionate about your brand, because people like working with products and services that people are really genuinely excited by. And if you're not excited about it, you should go find something else that you're more excited by, because I think customers today are pretty savvy, and they know when people are being fake, and they know when they're being sold to. And if you don't get to know that person on the other end of the phone or on the other side of the desk, then you're going to miss the boat. You're not going to be able to communicate with them in compelling ways. So when you're building a brand, get to know who your audience is, get to know what's really important to you, and then reiterate that in everything you do. Every touch point needs to be consistent in reinforcing those core messages and core values. And that is true whether you're P&G, Coca-Cola, a startup company. It doesn't matter. Those are the kind of lowest common denominators that I see in building successful brands.
And you hit a little bit on technology. Let me ask you this. When did that attitude or mentality kind of come about for you and in your career? When you talked about person to person, was it maybe you bumping your head, or is that how you've always been? Where did that mentality come from?
It's interesting. I would say, I've always been into math and science, and like I said, I took computer science in college in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So I love technology. I'm not a Luddite. I embrace technology. But, it's no surprise to anyone that lives in the real world today. We are just inundated with noise, and there is just so much out there 24/7 with social media, and we are just bombarded with messages and advertising and messaging and texting, and I think it's easy to get sucked in and overwhelmed with all of the noise that's out there. I mean, there's a lot of market research that says we are exposed to somewhere between, I think it's 5,000 to 10,000 different messages every day. Just the radio, the billboards, the pop-up ads. If you actually look at all the messages that you're being bombarded with, and it kind of comes back to where y'all started the conversation at the beginning, in terms of less is more. You have to kind of take a step back and peel everything back to its core of, you can't stand for everything. You can't have 50 different messages. People can't keep track of all that. Again, if you go to research, if you put people at a grocery store and give them 15 choices, it's much harder for them to make a decision than if you just gave them 3 choices. They don't need 15 flavors. They need 3 flavors, and you actually sell more stuff by giving them fewer options, because it's just overload. Your brain can't process that much. But I think, for me personally, I guess, in joining my first startup in the mid to late 90s, when things just, it was the go-go years. It was Internet 1.0 before there were any crashes. I think, you can call me old-fashioned, but I really feel like the marketing basics that I learned at P&G, that I learned at Coca-Cola, still applied. It didn't matter that you had all these fancy new tools and technologies and all the kind of bells and whistles that the internet gave you. It's if you don't have a great story to tell, if you don't have a valid message that's compelling to your target audience, all the other stuff is just a distraction. And I think with each one of those 3 startups, it just got reinforced with me. And now, here I am 18 plus years into this business, and I love picking up the phone and, talking to people. I love meeting for lunch or coffee. People want you to know that you're listening to them and their needs. And I know with my clients, you have to look at who is your target audience. And for someone like a brand like Coca-Cola, where you're being sold in 200 countries around the world, and you need to sell millions and millions of your product, running a Super Bowl ad or spending a lot of money on TV advertising and, print ads in very expensive magazines and newspapers might make a lot of sense. But most of my clients today, if they have 10 good clients, that's a great business for them. For other ones, maybe they only need 100 good clients. Well, you don't need a Super Bowl ad to find 10 or 100 clients. You want to really understand who your target audience is and talk to them in meaningful, compelling ways. And maybe that's a direct mail piece. Maybe it's doing an event, a high-end event where you invite people to something where it's very targeted to them. And you just have to know your audience and know what's going to be compelling, what messages they need to hear, and be authentically you so that you convince them and you build that relationship and build that trust so that they know you're a good fit for them to achieve their goals.
It's great advice. It really is for anybody out there, knowing who your target audience is. And, you mentioned a couple words that I want to ask you about, being authentically you. And you and your career path, having worked for these large corporations and then transitioning to being an entrepreneur, owning your own company. I want to ask you about diving into that and how you find some balance, because a lot of the entrepreneurs and small business owners that we cross paths with say that when you make that jump, it is 24/7, 365. You have got to dedicate yourself 100% to making that business successful, at least right away, and then maybe down the road you find a bit of balance. For you, when you jumped into your business, how did you approach that?
So it's a great question, and I will tell you, the first 5 years of my company, I worked every day, every night, every weekend, every holiday. I was all in, and I was scared to go on vacation. I thought if I stepped away from the business, the whole company would disappear. And something happened. It started to happen about 5 years into the company. My parents started getting sick. My in-laws started getting sick. We had 7 people in my kind of immediate family, one of my sister-in-laws, my great aunt, who was the matriarch of my family, my stepfather, 7 people that were very dear to me, started to get sick and sadly die over a 6-year period. And I realized that, I was not going to be able to work 24/7 because I wanted to help them and spend time with them and be there for them. So for several years, so my company, had been 5 years old. Then for about 6 years, I really had to juggle things very differently because I couldn't network for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and attend 10 networking events a week. I was traveling to help these family members who were being treated. Some were on the West Coast, some were at Mayo Clinic, some were in the Deep South. So I was traveling a lot, and when I wasn't traveling, I was getting ready to travel or catching up from just coming back from a trip. And so all of a sudden, I had to kind of hit the pause button. And I realized during that period, when everyone was kind of, fighting their own health battles, I was not able to do all the things that I thought were so important for me to build my business. But I had planted a lot of seeds for 5 years, really investing in the brand and the people and the clients, but stepping away from it. I was still working, but instead of showing up to the breakfast meeting and the lunch meeting and the dinner networking event, I would, connect with people through LinkedIn or send them an article or set up a conference call or a Skype call. And I just would say, I'm so sorry I'm not going to see you at the event next week. I'm going to be traveling. I didn't tell them I was at Mayo Clinic with my mom who was dying of cancer, but I said I'd love to set up a call and hear what's going on with you. So I started doing, again, it's a less is more. So I had deeper conversations with fewer people as opposed to going to a hotel bar room where there were 300 people swapping business cards. And what I learned in that window was, my business actually did not suffer. And when I would be in town and able to attend maybe 1 or 2 events on a given week, I would run into many of the same people I used to run into, 4 times a week. And their reaction to me was, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. What are you doing? Because I'm clearly not at the right events because I haven't seen you. Where are you going? What's going on? I need to give you a referral. I haven't seen you in forever. You seem to be doing great, blah, blah, blah. And so our business actually kind of moved up the food chain, not down the food chain during this very trying time for me emotionally and personally. But then as these people got sick and started to die, I didn't want to refill my dance card at work with all the things I used to run around driving myself crazy doing. I mean, before they got sick, there were nights where I'd hit 2 or 3 different networking events on the same night. I'd go to one of them early and one of them late. And you just, you don't get as much out of it when you've got one eye on your watch and thinking about the next person in the room you want to talk to. When you're really in the moment, you really have the deeper conversations, you get a lot more out of it. So when that period ended and the people were no longer around and I didn't have to jump on planes and, help them anymore, I just made a very conscious decision that I was not going to go back and do 2 networking, 3 networking events every night and fill my dance card from, breakfast through dinner, that I wanted to work out every day and take better care of myself. And I wanted to have deeper relationships, deeper conversations with fewer people. And so I just started networking a little differently. And, instead of meeting people in a big hotel ballroom, maybe I'd invite people for a lunch. And I'd have 2 or 3 different people that I thought might enjoy knowing each other. And we'd talk about a theme or a topic. And it would be a very productive conversation. They would get to meet other great people and learn about, like-minded businesses and people they enjoy spending time with. And it was kind of higher quality, lower quantity. And that really resonated with my clients, with my prospects, and with me. And again, my business was holding its own, if not growing. So in a perfect world, I thought, I learned something really good out of something bad. I was very sad to lose all of our loved ones, but it really made me, I think, a more thoughtful and more,
Sounds like it made you more focused, Paige. It sounds like it just gave you that ability to focus on the things that were truly important to you.
Exactly. And, and I would say to people, if I didn't get a chance to exercise one day, I'd say, I had a client who loved playing golf. And, he loved talking about creative ideas. And there's indoor driving range here in the Boston area. And so I said to him, I haven't had a chance to exercise today. It's a really busy day. What if we go to the driving range, hit some balls, and instead of sitting behind a desk and, doing a PowerPoint meeting or whatever, why don't we go hit some balls and talk? And, that was one of the most productive meetings he and I ever had. Or, take a walk with someone on a pretty day and talk about things that, you don't have to be at Starbucks drinking a Frappuccino and eating the scone. You can take a walk and, get some exercise, some fresh air, and really connect with people. And I found that it was much more meaningful and thoughtful, and it was authentic to me because it's kind of where I was in my life at that time, but it also helped me stand out versus other consultants and other vendors. Like, I was building real relationships with them. It wasn't just some generic, PowerPoint where you drop in a logo. It was like they got to know me as a person, and I got to hear them and their specific wants and needs, and that just made it much more meaningful. And I am really grateful that I learned such an important lesson from such a tough period of my life.
And I'm glad you hit on that. And you mentioned having meaningful conversations a lot. And I think back to when I was starting a foundation, and we would have these fundraisers and same type of deal. You just passing business cards. To me, it was nothing genuine about it. And I remember going to my manager and saying, hey, I would rather go sit and talk with these people because we're asking for money. So I would rather go sit and talk to them and let them feel my passion that I have to want to help my community, opposed to having this big fundraiser and we don't have those real meaningful conversations. So I'm glad you talked about that, because I think that's very important when you have a people that's running $100 different ways opposed to just locking in on a few people and making that conversation count.
Absolutely. And, when you get to know people on that human level, you get to know them. And as in financial services in particular, it's not just building a bank account to have the most money. It's like, why do you want more money? Well, you probably want to spend more time with your family, maybe take more vacations, to have more memories with your grandchildren, to be able to do things that you wouldn't be able to do, if you weren't in a better financial situation. And it's the stories, getting to know the stories and getting to know why things are important. It's not just a number, it's what's behind the number. What are those stories that are driving people's decisions? And I think the more you can connect with them on that human level and get to know their personal story, that is going to be much more meanobjective in the long term. And you will, I always say in marketing and professional services, it's not about me at all. My job with my clients is to help them achieve their goals. So it's the same in your business. It's not really about you. It's how can you help them achieve their goals. And my success story is the success of my clients. If they have a great product or a great service that makes the world a better place, a happier place, a more convenient place, and I can help tell that story with the right words and pictures in a compelling way, then my client's going to be successful. And that's really what matters to me. If I can help them accelerate their sales cycle to get more people using their products and services, then that's success to me. That's what motivates me.
Nice. And Paige, I remember I had a conversation with this business mogul now, Magic Johnson. I got a good relationship with him.
I love Magic Johnson.
Yes. He's one of my favorites. And
one of my all-time heroes.
Oh, yeah. And check this out, Paige. We were talking about, why he was successful in business. And he had a group of us around him, and everybody just asking all these questions on, how did he become successful? And I asked him a question. I asked him, what did you do wrong in business? Has everything ever went right, And I asked him, did you ever do anything wrong in business? And he said his biggest mistake is when he first started, he didn't make it about the people. So let me ask you this question, because we know you're successful and you're doing a great job. So has there been any mistakes that you made as a business owner?
Oh, my God. I feel like I make mistakes every single day. The good news is I don't make the same mistakes over and over.
There you go.
But, one of my biggest mistakes when I started my business, so, I started with a handful of people I had, worked with in previous lives. And, in any startup environment, when you start to take off, growth is like fasten your seatbelt. It can be a little scary. And I think people worry about failing. I don't think people think about what happens when this really starts to take off. And within the first 3 years, it was kind of that hockey puck where, the hockey stick where we really started to, the first year we quadrupled, the second year we tripled, the third year we doubled, but the base kept getting bigger and bigger, so things were going pretty quickly. And I realized in those first few years, some of the people I started with were not really the best people to grow with. There were a few people early on who I think were really good in the early phases, but as we moved up the food chain, got busier, grew faster, they were very comfortable doing their kind of one-trick pony things, but you have to wear lots of hats in a startup, and every day is a little different. And the market's moving quickly, and with social media and technology moving fast, I had a few people who were kind of locked into the same old, and they just wanted to keep doing the same thing over and over. But the market doesn't work that way, especially in marketing. There's so many new things. And I realized early on there were there were like one or two people that I was spending more time managing them than focusing on my clients or the strategy or the vision or the mission. And it took me like a year or two to get comfortable with the fact that even though these people helped get me to this point, they are probably not the best people to get me to the next level. And it really starts to affect the culture of the people if you don't have the right people on your team. And they were getting increasingly kind of threatened and uncomfortable as we were getting different kinds of clients and asking to do new and different things. They kept wanting to go back to what they were good at. And it's like, well, we did that last year. We're doing something else this year, and we're going to do something new again next year. And I think the tough lesson I learned was, you know, it's good for your business, and it's really fair to the people that are not moving with you and the team that is moving with you. You have to make sure that you have the right team. And sometimes the right decision is to shake hands and part ways and move together with the right team moving forward and not let people drag you down. Because when you have an A team, they want to work on the A team. They don't want to work with people on the B and C team. And you want your culture to be strong. You want your people to really get excited every day and to test their comfort zone and get outside the lines and push. And if there are people holding you back, I think you have to be honest about it. And, you know, it's hard because, you know, you want to be loyal and you want to, you know, be grateful for the people that helped, but they're better suited and you're better suited to go different directions. So I would just say to any entrepreneurial business, be brutally honest about what's working, what's not working. Learn from your mistakes, but sometimes you need to course correct and pivot and move forward in a direction that you might be uncomfortable with at first, but you have to test and learn to be able to grow. So, you know, it's a long-winded way of saying, you know, I make mistakes every day, but that's part of the entrepreneurial experience. You know, a lot of times you try things and you learn what works, but you also learn what doesn't work. And if it's not working, try something else and see if that works.
Right.
And then try something else again. And that's how you learn and grow.
Yeah, that's fascinating just to hear you say that, you know, that like you're going to make mistakes, just don't repeat them. And with all your experience, Paige, I want to ask you about your advice to others out there who may be considering making a similar move, you know, that you made years ago and starting your own company. If they're on the fence of you know, maybe leaving a company to go out on their own and they're worried about some of the risks that are involved, when you reflect back on all your experiences and you know, the way that things are now for you and the way that you're able to balance, like you said, both your professional and your personal life. For others out there who may be considering the same thing, or people who approach you on a day-to-day basis, what is the advice that you give to those people?
So number one, and I learned this at Procter & Gamble, it's not really what I think or what you think. It's what does your customer think? So you've got to really ground your decisions in market research, real market research. I think the mistake you see people make is they'll talk to their friends, they'll talk to their family, they'll talk to their neighbor, and they'll say, hey, I have this idea for a business. What do you think? And the problem with that is your friends, your family, they don't want to hurt your feelings. You know the saying, like, nobody will tell you your baby's ugly? You know, and they're not doing you a favor because by not being honest with you, you think, oh, I've got this great idea. I should quit my good job and go start this company. But if you didn't do real market research with real customers who are going to pay real money to buy that product or service, you don't have a real business. So I would always tell people, be brutally honest about what it is you want to do. What's the product? What's the service? Who's the audience? How much are you charging? What else is out there that people are doing right now? since that doesn't exist? How are they getting by without you now? What are they unhappy about? What are they missing? And you really have to do a deep dive to get those customer insights so that your new product or service really does fill a true market need and a realistic price point. So that is number one. And if you, in fact, find out there is a market need, the doors are going to be slammed in your face all day long. Entrepreneurs, the woman, Sarah Blakely, that invented Spanx, basically she came up with this idea that didn't exist, and she kept trying to sell it, and people weren't paying attention. They're like, ladies already wear pantyhose. They don't need Spanx. I've already got my undergarments. I don't need this. And she's like, no, but this is different. And she finally got so tired of these buyers, these retail buyers slamming the door, she said, come with me to the bathroom. I'm going to give you a pair, and I want you to put them on and come out of the bathroom and show me, let's do before and after. And after they tried it on and saw how much better they looked in their clothes wearing her undergarments, every single buyer bought it for their store, and they sold out immediately, and now she's $1 billion business.
Wow.
But, she tested it with real people, and she was so determined that she was so sure, so passionate, she knew it worked, and it turned into $1 billion idea. But if it didn't work, and if ladies had tried it on and it didn't make them feel better in their clothes, it wouldn't be a real business. Even if her mother and her best friend told her they were great, it wouldn't have mattered. So that, to me, is like a core tenet of, are you a real entrepreneur? And then for people that do have day jobs, there are entrepreneurial there are a lot of people in corporate jobs that have entrepreneurial ideas and an entrepreneurial spirit. And there may be a way to be more entrepreneurial in a business, to do something more intrapreneurial. And that's great, too, as a kind of baby step to starting something on the outside. And I know people who have ideas in a company, and the company decides not to do it, but they say, it's a great idea, and if you do it, I'll be one of your customers. And so that's a good way. That's market research, too. Maybe the company doesn't want to go that direction, but they're willing to pay you as a consultant to go do it for them. And then you start a business with a real customer, and then you go from there. So that's a possibility, too. But I know for me, when you have an idea and you just can't shake it, and every day you're sitting at your desk job and you think, I could do this better. I could do I have another idea, and you cannot shake it. And you think, even if this idea doesn't work, I'd rather try it and learn, and even if I have to course correct and pivot, I'd rather do that than come back to this desk job in 5 years, just be in the same job. Then maybe it is a good thing for you to do. And again, even if it doesn't turn into Google or Facebook, it could be a great small business, or maybe you buy a franchise. There are a lot of ways to kind of scratch that itch. So, be open-minded, but do your homework.
I love it. I love the market research. Like you said, your family are going to tell you, oh, yeah, I believe in you. Some people might leave a great job and go off to be a singer and can't sing. It has to make sense. So I'm glad you said that. I mean, if you're going to take that big step, and trust me, Paige, I love people that bet on themselves. If you're going to take that step, make sure you do the proper research so you're able to land on your feet.
Right. No, absolutely.
Well, it's been great getting to talk with you, Paige. Certainly, you have been through many different experiences, both in your professional and your personal career, and we really appreciate you telling us how they have intersected and how you have found your way to Mavens and Moguls. And I can guarantee you this: none of our listeners are going to forget that name, because it is very catchy. So kudos to you for that, and we appreciate your time.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I could talk to y'all forever. Thank you so much. This has been great to share kind of the lessons learned. I've got all the war wounds to prove it, but that's how you really learn the lessons, I got to say.
No, it's been great stuff. Paige Arnof-Fenn from Mavens and Moguls. We appreciate you joining us here on Power Forward.
Well, thanks for having me. Take good care. Thanks again.
All right, Mateen, so takeaway time from our conversation with Paige and, where to start. I mean, all the experiences that she has had from Wall Street to these big global corporations to starting her own company. And oh, by the way, I feel like she kind of buried the lead here because her resume also includes Stanford undergrad and Harvard for grad school. So she obviously knows a thing or two about a lot of different things.
Oh, she does. I mean, super smart. The thing I really loved about her was the fact that the way she built relationships. Sometimes I think when you're trying to start something new, you got so many things going on, and it's hard to hunker down on one or two things. And building those meaning relationships, having meaningful conversations with people, sitting down and really getting down to the nuts and bolts of things. I think that, for me, that really stood out, and I really appreciated and respected the way she went about doing her business.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And just listening to you even talk about your own story about being at a fundraiser for your foundation, and there's lots of different people there, and you want to, shake hands and kiss babies and try and get to as many people as you can. But for you, it was like, no, I want to actually interact with people on a deeper level, and for me that's way more important than trying to talk to every single person in this room.
For sure, Justin. I sit back, I was at a fundraiser and I just realized you got so much going on, and nothing was genuine to me. And I told my manager, I want to go sit with these people face to face because we're asking them for money, and they have to know that how serious I am about this, how passionate I am about this, and we can't sell that at this fundraiser. It's music playing, it's a lot of other stuff going on. I would rather sit face to face, and for me, it was very beneficial.
Well, another thing that she hit on that I thought was interesting, in building a successful brand, and certainly she did it multiple times. The keys for her: be authentic, be consistent, and have passion for your business. I mean, it makes so much sense. It seems simple, but it makes a lot of sense. You can't be fake. You can't pretend. When you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, it's got to be not just what you do for a job, but to a certain extent, it is a reflection of who you are. The other thing, too, that stands out, and it circles back to our conversation at the beginning of the episode, choosing quality over quantity. Less sometimes can be more. And how Paige came to the point through some losses that she experienced with her relatives getting sick and then unfortunately passing away. She realized that she could still be successful, but simplify things. And it really does resonate because we all try to do so much, but sometimes you really have to recalibrate and prioritize and think about the things that are most important to you.
Exactly. You got to have things. You got to cater to the things that's most important to you, and you got to have a target. You got to have that target audience. Sometimes you want to go out and conquer the world, and if you just start, it's a process. If you take it one step at a time, and you get better and better and better, then you can build. As you go along, but you have to start somewhere, and I think taking baby steps and embracing that process along the way is very helpful.
See, we're learning something new every time we do this.
Every time. That's what I love about it, Justin.
Me too, man. Great stuff. All right, thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on Power Forward. To make sure you never miss an episode of Power Forward, subscribe wherever you find your podcasts and leave us a review. And look for another new episode coming your way 2 weeks from now, featuring more inspirational stories of success. I'm Justin White. We'll see you next time on Power Forward.